Well, everyone, iOS 26 has just came out in a developer beta format, so I wanted to go and compare it kind of to iOS 18 and kind of see what the main differences are. Now, number one, there are some big key differences for the most part. iOS 26, as you can see on the left side, does look slightly different than iOS, 18 that we have on the right side. If I kind of place my iPhone side by side like this, you can kind of get an idea that my iPhone 12 on the left side is on iOS 26 and iOS 18 on the iPhone 16. The UI is slightly different as you can kind of tell. If you look inside of these icons, like look at the folder icon right here. When I kind of swipe it in between, you can see that there's a background to it that kind of swipes in and out. It's kind of like a liquid glass kind of thing. That's what Apple kind of showcased. The iPhone on iOS 18 doesn't really have it, as you can see. So it does kind of, it doesn't really change per the background. If we take a look at things like the control center, this is a very big difference. I am not a fan of the iPhone, that's on iOS 26 right now. I feel like that particular update doesn't really look that great, right? It's really hard to see. It just kind of blends in. I like on the iPhones that are on iOS 18, this one looks a little bit more uniform. It's easier to see these types of icons. Actually changing out these icons though, I think everything looks pretty much the same here. So this experience should be relatively the same as you can tell. But iOS 26, their main thing is basically this liquid glass type of interface. Now, other things. If you go inside of applications, look at this. The application on the iOS, 18, the search bar was at the bottom, and when you're scrolling through, you don't have a persistent search bar. I actually do kind of like the iOS 26 search bar right here. It kind of is always there. This is uniform across most applications. You're going to see a little bit of a difference there with the bottom bars. Even on the camera application, look how different the camera app is now. iOS 26 looks like this. You have these different camera icons at the bottom. On the older iPhone iOS 18, this is what it looks like. I'm going to be honest, I definitely do like how my iPhone on iOS 18, I used to like that way that looks. Now this iPhone looks a lot better. If you're on iOS, 12 or whatever, or sorry, iOS 26, this one I think looks so much better than on iOS 18. So this camera app got a really big redesign. That in and of itself is pretty nice. Otherwise though, when you're scrolling in and out, the UI elements here are pretty much the same thing, not much change there. There's a really ugly animation when you're scrolling down. Look on iOS 26, look at iOS 18. Much cleaner on iOS 18, even swiping out, look at this. I don't like how it does that every time. So hopefully Apple can go ahead and change that. I'll demonstrate it one more time. It's just kind of does some weird stuff. Hopefully Apple can fix that on iOS 26. The phone call application also got a pretty big update here. Look at the bottom bar. This is kind of more pertinent, it's kind of more pronounced. This one kind of blended in. So that in and of itself is another big change. If you're going inside of the voicemail option, you can see it looks slightly different. Under contacts, pretty much the same thing too. Slight differences all throughout. And the UI elements inside of the search bar are also different. iMessage also looks very different than before. So this is iMessage now, again, iOS 18, iOS 26. So you can see right here, just look at the top bar, right? The glass layout, again, you can see the background. iOS 18, not quite. But also tapping into the group settings here, there's a lot more options inside of iOS 26. We now have options to basically go ahead and change the background now, which is really cool. We did not have that inside of iOS 18. So we have a lot more of these little tiny changes all throughout, which is actually a really welcome change. I think that in and of itself is a really cool thing. You also have the ability of sending out polls. So between iOS 18 and iOS 26, these are the differences you can kind of expect between the chat bubbles. So you can see right here kind of scrolling through, there's probably going to be more options inside of iOS 26 than for something like iOS 18, again, depending on the phone that you get. Also, CarPlay is going to look a lot different. Also, look at this, right? It kind of blurs out the background on iOS 26. There's a tendency of not really blurring out the background a majority of the time. So you can still see the background. So I do kind of like this. It looks more like a pop-out window, which is kind of a nicer effect. Now, swiping back up, another thing you'll notice, there's no swipe up bar inside of the iPhones on iOS 26. There might be a way to enable this in settings, but you can see on the iPhones on iOS 18, there's a swipe up bar. iOS 26, not quite. So I think that's actually kind of a nice touch. We don't really need that per se anymore. Safari is also a little bit different. So look at the bottom bar one more time. This bottom bar is kind of a little bit more in your face. On the iPhones on iOS 26, you can see that you can kind of see more, kind of, at least when it first loaded. But then the bar is still there in the background. I think they're going to probably end up changing that out somehow. But that is going to be another cool thing. And if you want to see the bar again, you just tap at the bottom and it'll basically stay there. But it will also go away when you're not using it, which is actually kind of nice. We also have CarPlay updates. CarPlay got some big updates here too, which is really cool. One thing you'll notice too is that when you're inside of applications, all the applications will have some new unique changes. Right here, this is going to be the most consistent one. Again, if you take a look at the bar at the bottom, look at this. The bar at the bottom on iOS 26 essentially looks like this. It's going to be giving you this type of layout here, which I think looks fine. But on iOS 18, this is kind of what most people are probably more familiar with. Also, if you kind of go inside of an application like this, again, the things like this, I've noticed the search bars are the most pertinent ones. So this is what the search bar looks here versus here. And the search bars are always at the bottom now. Even inside of the Photos application, if you go inside of Photos, this is kind of what it looks like. Essentially more or less kind of the same thing, but there are some differences. Look at the bottom bar here, look at the bottom bar here. And this is just in beta 1. I'm sure there's going to be more betas in the future, but that is kind of the most consistent change that I've been seeing over and over and over again. Right now, the one thing you're going to end up seeing though, is that there's going to be lots of bugs inside of iOS 26. iOS 18 was already pretty buggy, and the fact that iOS 26 has the potential of getting better, but it also has the potential of being a little bit more buggier when it comes down to it as well. I also noticed a little bit of a change with the keyboard. So you can see between iOS 18 and iOS 26, there's a pretty big change in the keyboard. The keyboard now on iOS 26 is essentially more cleaner, and it kind of looks visually nicer. Inside of iOS 18, not quite the case, if I'm being honest. If I go and hop out of here, if I go inside of a similar application, so they were both in settings and the keyboard looked different. If I go inside of, let's just go back to iMessage right here, and let's go back into the bar at the bottom. You can see again, look how different the keyboard looks. I really do like the stock keyboard inside of iOS 26. I think this one looks really nice. You can see I'm using the standard English keyboard here and the standard English keyboard here. Now, let's go and try something. Let's go and try dictation and see what it looks like. I want to film a video. So just from that experience alone, pretty good, looks pretty decent, but the keyboard itself looks so much cleaner inside of iOS 26, and I do think that is actually a pretty welcome change when it comes down to it from that side. If you look at the animations, again, pretty much the same thing. There's not really going to be anything big because speed-wise is going to be, depending on the phone for the most part. I did hear that there was a big change in Apple Music as well. So if you're within Apple Music in different applications like this, once again, look at the bottom bar. It's not there until you end up using it. And then when you end up swiping through, you'll see that the biggest problem I'm going to experience here is when you are scrolling through, I do like how it gives me that effect. Like, look, it really looks glassy on the bottom of the iOS 26 device. But the problem here is that if you're inside of an application, you're actually doing stuff, it's hard to tell like what you're looking at here. Like, I like how I can see the background, but I don't like how it's really hard to see these particular icons. Same thing with the control center. I like how I can see the background, but I don't like how it's actually like obstructing what I'm seeing here. I'd rather have this type of effect on here if I'm being honest. And also, I'd probably rather have this practically than this. This is really hard to see, and if Apple's just going to do this the whole time, that's going to be very annoying to kind of get used to. Even look at right here, right? When I'm playing a song or something, if I have text behind it, it's hard to see kind of what song I'm playing, the cover art and stuff like that. It's way more pertinent here. I'm never really going to be in the control center to just see what's in the background. I want to see what's in front of it. So that could be another one of those things that Apple could end up fixing in the future as well. So in terms of that, lots of cool changes. I'm really looking forward to kind of what's going on in the future of this particular update. We're going to have to kind of wait and see what happens here, but that is essentially iOS 26 and kind of comparing it at a high level against iOS 18. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.